Oh, why, hello there. Yeah, it's Wire Guitars here, back again. And I wanted to give a bit of reasoning as to why I said something that I said earlier today on stream, something that I still stand behind in every way, shape, or form, but that I think I had trouble articulating my reasons as to why I believed what I believed and what I was talking about. So I'm going to do that now with a more clear head. I was talking about the reasons for outsourcing labor, the labor of manufacturing base tier goods. So this is especially true for in the United States, we outsource a lot of steel. These jobs are considered more like a rudimentary uh, aspect of the supply chain of a lot of the goods that the United States does manufacture, such as like computer parts and just computers in general, or the assembly of cars or of technology. But we don't manufacture a lot of the goods that make up that technology. We just import those goods. And the reasoning for that is it's very simple. It is simply because it's cheaper to do that. The labor costs in other countries, specifically China, is incredibly cheap when you can employ a child to work for pennies on the dollar, to work 12 hours a day, to do the exact same work that an American that you'd have to pay a full-time salary plus a pension for to do here in America. That's the reason why supply costs are often outsourced and supply chains are often outsourced. And I was trying to explain that concept in relation to the issues that a lot of Americans seem to vocalize that they have with how the economy works for America right now. A lot of people argue that we need to bring manufacturing back here in the United States, manufacturing jobs. And the sad reality is that, and I'm not trying to be doomer about this. I'm actually trying to be pragmatic about this. I don't see any way in which those kinds of jobs come back from a competitive standpoint unless grave sanctions to the Chinese economy, first of all, happen, second of all, work. I should not even consider suggesting that because that would only ever be stupid. Sanctioning the Chinese economy is stupid. It will only ever hurt Americans, and I do mean like Americans like you and me, because us sanctioning the economy, the Chinese economy, leads to Chinese businesses either A, increasing the costs on their goods from the consumer standpoint. So it's a VAT tax set all the way down to the American consumer. They'll just raise the prices on their goods relative to whatever tax is imposed on them, whatever tariff we impose on them percentage wise. Or they'll just look elsewhere and then we'll lose access to that good. That happens time and time again because, as it turns out, China is the lead exporter of goods in the world, and it's not even close. Us sanctioning the Chinese economy has traditionally not worked. We'll say historically not worked as a means of punishing their economy for using child labor. It's just important to recognize that because, in my opinion, if we're going to be super individualistic about this, if we're just going to be super selfish and say, okay, what does this even mean? What is this for? Like, how does this in any way, shape, or form relate to my life? It's just good to be like, again, like pragmatic or blunt about it. Policy aimed at competing with countries that currently produce goods, especially countries that lead the world in producing goods, need to recognize why and how those countries lead the world in producing those goods. And they also need to recognize that if they can't compete in a way that makes sense, so what I mean is if America doesn't want to start employing children at the ages of 12 and under to 12-hour workdays, then I quite frankly don't see how America can reasonably expect to bring back these kinds of jobs, because those companies will try to outsource unless extreme regulation starts to happen on these companies that outsource these jobs. That is a possibility. Perhaps we start directing our policy at companies employing outside labor to sell things here in America. We could look at that, but looking at trying to bring manufacturing jobs back when your lead competition is a country that can use 12-year-olds to work 13-hour days for pennies on the dollar, it's laughable. Like, from a competitive standpoint, you stand no chance. And it kind of just it does boggle the mind a little bit. Like, why would we direct policy and why would we direct resources to trying to compete with that field? Like, what are we doing? You know, it's a joke. Like, we got to get serious about this. It doesn't make any sense to try to compete with that market. It'd be way better to like look at that from the outside and see how we can approach that as an entity rather than like joining it and saying like, oh, like maybe we can just, I don't know, sanction their economy and like, I don't know, maybe kids can work at, like in Alabama, like maybe 16-year-olds can start working and like maybe we could lower the like no, we're not going to go back to the 1800s where we're all just like slaves again, right? Or are we? I don't know. Like, whatever direction we want to go, we need to decide and commit to it. If we want to go back to like employing children under the age of 12 to work 13-hour days, I mean, so be it. I really hope not. If we don't want to do that and we want to recognize that, you know, manufacturing is either competing with that or, I don't know, doing away with that system entirely, which honestly, that's pretty base. Like, why can't we just like tell China to stop doing that and then maybe like have the UN step in and like everybody could start sanctioning China or something? I don't know. Like, if you want to deal with China employing children, I'm on board with that. But we have to have a unified front for that. It can't just involve the United States looking at their economy and saying, we don't like what you're doing, so here's a sanction, because that's just going to directly affect the American consumer, as tariffs tend to do when they're uncoordinated. Anyways, yeah, that was kind of my explanation behind why I think either sanctioning economies in isolation, or more specifically, trying to seriously bring back manufacturing jobs in the United States as a competitor to Chinese labor is a fool's errand. That's my explanation on that, and that's really all I wanted to say. So GG's and have a good one.